Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. Today, we're going into the realm of toys. We're going to be looking at the mysterious toys that are puzzling archaeologists, and we're going to see if we're puzzled or if that's a common phenomena. We're going to take a deeper dive into it, and the BBC has this beautiful article laid out for us. And, Colin, do you just want to take us in?
Sure. So I'm sitting here looking purposely arrogant, as this article has some classic British tongue in cheek. And as an American, we of course take everything the British do extremely personally.
And literally.
If we don't, how will we distinguish ourselves?
So, yeah. So the big crux of this article is there are a number of artifacts that have been discovered that archaeologists labeled as things like buttons, loom weights, perforated pottery,
Religious artifacts.
miscellaneous objects, ritual purpose, these sort of like default terms, things that we didn't really fully understand at the time that they were being excavated, what they were, and we applied our best guess or our best understanding that we now understand to be a new classification of artifacts that were not previously considered, namely being children's toys.
And that's something that's very new in the field, ironically, and it's been studied in the past. Don't get me wrong. Don't over take too much into that, but it's one of those things that there's a renowned focus on children nowadays because in the past, a lot of times they were discounted. They weren't put into much credence. And there was actually a very pervasive theory that because infant mortality was so high that there wasn't much emotional sentiment or even resource investment into children, meaning they wouldn't give them toys. They wouldn't put too much effort into them because there was a high likelihood that the kid would die. And
Yeah.
in hindsight, oh, go on.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just gonna say, like, we later learned that this isn't exactly true. That children were really important, in fact, and that people did care about children. And this theory was pro. Oh God, I'm not even gonna try. It was spread. The theory was spread.
Promulgated.
Yes, that's the word. By
Promulgated.
amateur French historian Philippe Arié, which obviously, if you're an amateur, you may not be having the best theories in the world.
The
So,
1960s. This is why you get a degree before you speak on something.
so there's also this idea. We have a bit of a bias. Well, not we, but like early archaeology has a bit of a bias that early on in the field because archaeology comes out during the Victorian era in Europe, or at least England. And during this time, it was very prominent to parenting style wise to make sure that children are merely seen, not heard.
Yep.
And that kind of led to the bias of, not really paying too much attention to what children might be doing in the field and like these times. Because
Mhm.
again, other concepts like children died early on a lot of times. Other or they were not just given anything. They were just there, and when they were old enough to hold a tool or whatever, they just did that, helped in the
Yeah.
helped in the field.
So,
But nowadays, archaeology does take into account children more, at least compared to what they used to.
Well, and the other
yeah,
part of it is it quite literally slaps you in the face. Like, there's an image on the article of children playing with toys.
Yeah.
yeah, it's and I believe the image you're referring to is what, the Greek vessel?
No, I'm actually referring to the 9th century BC stela depicting two men playing with spinning tops.
The stele, yeah, yeah. Below that, there is a image of what is clearly a child on a Greek jug playing with what appears to be a sparrow and or chucking said jug at the sparrow. Yeah,
Oh,
you missed that
kids.
one, didn't you?
Kids just being kids. I mean, you could see that on the
The
screen.
earliest depiction of boys being boys, just throwing amphorae at birds, as boys do.
You know, it happens. But then I wonder, is this like a high-end vase then? Or is this like, no, Joey, you only throw the vase with yourself throwing the vase on it?
I mean, like,
Well,
like,
it is Attic red figure, so
yeah,
it's probably a
that's.
high-end vase.
I mean, it's depicted. I wonder if this vase was dedicated to the child throwing the vase.
Like, this is because
Yeah,
Joey made us have to
yeah,
replace it.
yeah. It's like, yeah, we're gonna shame him for the rest of his life by commissioning a vase that tells us why we had to get the vase.
And then
And if it was,
2,500 years ago, we're shaming him.
and if it was like in a tomb, like his tomb, like they got out of from, because early archaeologists like to rob tombs. That was just that, like they're like the mother was just like, he will always be remembered from ruining my favorite vase.
Separately
Yes.
of the funeral, you see a group of birds huddled around a little depression. Like, this is where he died, where he was brutally murdered by the flying vase.
Oh great, the birds have a cult dedicated to another dead bird.
Yeah. But if we go down to the next picture for them, Justin,
Yeah.
it's the little miniature horse with the wheels.
Yeah.
This is a 2,100-year-old grave good,
Wow.
and one of the big things with it is if you look at its wheels, those wheels would, as toys often do, break and come off.
Yeah.
And archaeologists would find them without the rest of the horse, and those would often get interpreted as like loom weights and things like that, even though they're not really that good of a loom weight.
The crazy thing to me, and maybe I'm just over analyzing this, but the fact that that's a wooden horse that's 2,100 years old, and I guarantee you, to this day, I could walk into the store and find a wooden horse with wheels on it. Or like a plastic horse these days, but like almost the exact same toy, because I guarantee I even had something similar to that.
Yeah, you can also see this one was preserved pretty well. There's only a few chips on the wheels, and you can see the two break points, one going down the horse's neck and the other one sort of bisecting him near the front of his back.
So maybe he didn't make
This
it
thing
all that
was
long.
well, I think he was in 3 or 4 pieces, and he's surprisingly well put together. I'm not seeing a lot of clear fractions on this grave goods. This is very well preserved.
Wow.
Also, real quick, apparently, the article mentions both Plato and Aristotle talk about the importance of children being able to play as part of their development. So that's one of the I thought that was really interesting. Apparently, they didn't start school before the age of 7. So
Yeah, that's a childhood period if I ever seen one.
So I think that's really interesting that like both Plato and Aristotle talk about this.
Yeah, it's a childhood period, and with the high child mortality rate, I really don't want to have to pay all those school dues if you're just going to kick over at 5.
Yeah.
Well, in ancient Greece, they practiced infanticide. Specifically,
This is not Sparta.
No, like in ancient Greece, it was pretty common because the fathers often were legally owned the children, and therefore if the child was considered unwanted in general, not just in Sparta, they would place the child in the woods and let nature take its course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I find it really interesting, like this vase along with Aristotle and Plato's mentioning. I mean, obviously, like records of infanticide, like that might not necessarily be like the standard, but the fact that it's happened is interesting.
Yeah, well, it was probably not common practice, but it was also not so unheard of as to not be featured as the premise of a number of both origin myths and plays.
And Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. See Oedipus Rex.
And also Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
That's we do not comment on the historical accuracy or inaccuracy of video game franchises.
Okay.
Yes.
Beyond infanticide, when you look further down the article, it brings up another valid question of various female figurines, whether they're depicting women or whether they're actually like toy dolls. Like, were they used for fertility rituals, Or are they actually just little dollies for kids to carry around and play with?
Yeah.
Honestly, I can imagine them being like little doll figurines. Like if there were if there was like I can imagine like they put like some cloth around them as like
Yeah.
an outfit or
Hmm. Yeah, that could be it. One of my favorite things I've been wanting to talk about ever since we pulled this article,
Mm-hmm.
is there is a section of work as play, because there's some very interesting fingerprint analysis from the site of Tel Nagila in Israel that shows work as play. They've analyzed some of the fingerprints in very small, crudely made vessels.
Yeah.
They've discovered that those were made by children, and the prevailing is particularly small children. And the prevailing theory is, a work as play environment where the children are playing with the clay, making little clay pots, probably emulating their parents, and they're learning the life skill of making the pot while also just playing in the mud, essentially.
That's actually something too that's become very prominent in North American archaeology, specifically with stone tool making. There was always a point where you would come across like the debris from making a stone tool, and a lot of times you could see really bad debris and like really awful experience. And now they're starting to come to terms like, oh, this might be a kid practicing or a kid doing the same thing who may not have mastered the skill yet, and they're learning from someone or there's someone nearby teaching them. It's like, huh, you know, maybe we give kids a little more credit than we do now. I think there's a different downplay of children.
also towards the end there the one of the archaeologists for this mentions that as much as we don't know for sure with children, we also don't know how for sure with adults and how they were using things as well. We make educated analysis and or like I guess in a sense an educated guess, but like these aren't like guesses saying like, oh yeah, I guess the sky's blue because it's a nice color. It's more of like you use evidence. You have to we analyze, we talk to other people in the field
We
to like
deduce.
understand. Yeah, essentially we deduce everything. And even then, we are also still limited by the fact that we don't have the people here to tell us how and why they used objects in general.
And that leads to a thing that the article actually mentioned that's kind of a running joke and gag in the archaeology circle is that a lot of times when archaeologists don't know, there's almost an instinctual notion to say something might be for ritual purposes because the use may not be known. And when you truly think about it, if an item is used for a ritual, you may not see signs of wear or use, or you may not see consistent wear or use.
It's also important to note that in the field, ritual doesn't necessarily have to be something religious.
That's
It
true
could be
too.
a social ritual, as in like people have a social ritual of just going to Starbucks every morning to start their day.
Yeah,
It's a
brushing
very
your teeth,
common
eating breakfast.
like these are all cultural rituals that we all do, like especially since like we're told breakfast is the most important meal of the day. We've been all told that since we were a kid, and so now like it's a ritual for many people to eat breakfast
So
before starting
it's
everything.
it's an interesting, and I don't know if you two have read this, but I'm gonna make a reading suggestion to you and everyone to read it or watching. Is there's actually a book called Motel of Mysteries, and Motel of Mysteries is set in the future, a couple hundred years down the line, where a bunch of archaeologists are excavating a motel and they're trying to deduce what everything in the motel was used for and by. And a lot of the stuff they couldn't really deduce the meaning or the use for, so they ended up just considering it to be ritualistic. And it's a really interesting critique on how archaeologists approach these things, but then it also gives you a good framework of how archaeologists are actually trying to put that puzzle together when there is very few context clues even in a an undisturbed environment.
And even then, those context clues, even when we do have context clues, it can take years and years. So when you see stuff like where like archaeologists or like a headline where it'll be like this one was like archaeologists puzzled by toys, it really means that this is now like the folks are comfortable enough to release information about this after probably like spending 5 years.
Oh yeah, anytime stuff hits the mainstream media with archaeology news, it's probably 3 to 5 years behind the curve, behind peer-reviewed articles, behind multiple iterations, years and years of field work and study. Like archaeology is not a news-breaking field, and I hate
Takes
to
a
say
while.
that. Yeah, even like the
Yeah,
big
it's
groundbreaking discoveries still take months to get through because there's validation periods, there's testing periods, there's waiting for data to come back.
there is also there's cross referencing with just even if you have a great theory and a great set of data, does it hold up across other sites? And there's all sorts of various tests that go on. It's all this new stuff that we are proclaiming in these reacts and reacting to. It is new stuff to us looking in from essentially the outside. But if you're a part of the research, your research is 3 to 5 years before it comes out.
It's also important to note also with some sites, it's a if there's like any sort of like news site mentioned, that site has probably has almost half a decade's worth of work
At
already
least,
done
yeah.
on it. Mostly just because if someone says, oh, look, a new ancient site's been discovered, and like it's literally just been discovered, the amount of looters that will flock
Oh,
there.
like crazy.
So like
Yeah.
this by delaying the announcement of like any site means that they can set up protections
Yeah.
as well. So
or,
yeah,
or at least get a crack at excavating it before they have to drive people off the land.
But I
or
think
at
we're
least
getting
keep
a
people from
little
stealing shit.
I think we're getting a little past where we were, so I think this is a good point for us to hit the brakes and to wrap this up. If you guys enjoyed watching this, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for us or there's something you want us to react to, be sure to drop a comment down below and let us know. We're all ears. We do this pretty regularly, and we're just as interested in the news as you guys are. So thank you for watching, and be sure to check out our next episode, which will be a week from today. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.